Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. So now, how does the rest of the day and tomorrow look like? So now next we will start with the scientific part of the workshop. We have a number of very exciting talks from quantum physics, from atmospheric science, artificial intelligence. So very interesting scientific talks. Today we will also have, and that's a special highlight of the symposium here, we will have the award of the ESI medal to Isabel Gallagher, and that's great. So, but we will start with 2 talks, and after talk there will be a coffee break, and at the coffee break there might be some cake. We will see, and hopefully there will be also some singing. So, all right, and then later there will be some music. Now I think we should proceed with the scientific part, and the first talk that we are going to hear is by Wolfgang Reiter. This will be a talk about the early history of the ESI, and nobody could, I think, do it better than you, Wolfgang, because you have been part of the ESI community from the start and have helped the ESI into existence. So Wolfgang Reiter is a historian of science. He's a physicist actually by training, but he's now an honorary professor of the history of science at the University of Vienna. He has studied physics and mathematics and philosophy here at the University of Vienna, then worked as a nuclear physicist in the so-called Radium Institute. Later he became a civil servant in the Federal Ministry of Science and Research, and in this role he has played, and in this function he has played a very important role for the ESI. I should add that he has written extensively about the history of science in Austria, and particularly about the history of science in some dark times during National Socialism. And I would like to ask Wolfgang Reiter to come to the stage and tell us about his recollections of the early times of the ESI.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, before I start, and I decided to give a very traditional talk, I need a speaker's desk. I do not use all these techniques, which had not been here in these rooms 30 years ago. So I am relying on an old environment, and this means a speaker's desk. And I hope so that this will serve me. This is not a speaker's desk. Okay.
Sorry about that.
So, again, do you hear me? Obviously. Yes, thank you. Again, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and colleagues, thank you very much for your kind words, Christoph. It is both a pleasure and an honor to talk to you today, and I'm grateful for the director of the Institute, Christoph, for giving me the opportunity to share with you my recollections on the foundation of the ESI and the early days of this remarkable, successful research institute. Let's remember the historical conditions 30 years ago, when the ESI had been established. Compared to today's political turmoil, the multiple crises, and the current wars, accompanied with widespread delusions, times had been different in the early 1990s, I think. Almost miraculously, a wave of optimism and confidence was felt in much of Europe after a long period of stagnation, quite in contrast to today's thin and sordid fabric of hope all over. In the years of the 1990s, the restructuring of Europe's political landscape opened opportunities of innovations and new initiatives. Led by optimistic expectations of a brighter future, a group of Viennese scientists, strongly supported by a like-minded international group of scholars, had the vision to set up a new institute at the interface of mathematics and physics, providing a bridge not only between these two subjects, but also between the scientific communities of Eastern, Central, and Western European countries. It was a vision of a new landscape in the sciences of the European scale, And this vision became reality. The reality check is our gathering these days, today and tomorrow. What had started around 1990 with informal discussions between the Russian mathematician Alexander Vinogradov from Moscow and Peter Michal from Vienna about the devastating consequences of the breakup of the Soviet Union for the Soviet and Eastern academic scientific communities grew into an innovative concept. In August of 1990, Vinogradov sent a letter to Peter Michal with the proposal to set up an institute devoted to mathematics and physics in Vienna. Vinogradov vaguely mentioned nonlinear problems, complexity research, as a possible topic and proposed to name the institute Erwin Schrödinger Institute. This naming was, of course, cleverly targeted to guarantee broad acceptance both in local politics and the sciences. Regrettably, Vinogradov's crucial letter survived neither in my own files nor in those of Peter Michal. So it goes. Setting up an institution at the interface between mathematics and physics in Vienna was relatively soon considered as a potential valuable contribution at a time of crisis. Based on the cultural and scientific tradition in Vienna, especially in the field of mathematical physics, from Boltzmann of the late 19th century to Walter Thiering's beginning to establish the field as a discipline, as a distinct discipline in the mathematical and physical sciences in the years of the 60s and 70s of the last century, after the period of devastation of the scientists by the Nazis in Austria. A new institute based in Vienna could provide a focal point of both Eastern and Western science and an international platform at the highest level of research in the field of mathematical physics. A further, quite political aspect was envisioned in contributing to the reversal of disastrous brain drain by allowing scientists from Russia temporarily to work at the new institute before returning to their home institutions and to bring back some money from their daily allowances provided by the new institute. During the first years of the ESI, this was intended to become common practice and to contribute to the visibility of the institute. This concept and idea these days is remarkably timely by ESI's activities to support scientists from Ukraine. Again, the vision of the European dimension is still vivid. Looking backwards, it seems that the concept had its intrinsic logic. But, as it turned out, the genesis of the new institute still has a long and intrinsic way to go. Vinogradov's initiative was warmly welcomed by Walter Thiering, who felt strongly obliged to invest energy and time into this proposal. The first step was to sharpen the focus of the proposal on internationality, both in terms of research activities and participating scientists. In a letter to the then Vice Chancellor and Minister for Science and Research, Dr. Erhard Busek, dated October 18, 1990, Thiering proposed to establish an international research institute in Vienna, devoted to mathematical physics with the name Erwin Schrödinger Institute for Mathematical Physics. The focus on mathematical physics has the potential to integrate trends in the mathematical and physical sciences and given them a cooperative platform of European and international visibility, a concept certainly quite close to Diering's very personal perception in physics. Diering's proposal immediately won the support of eminent scientists all over the world, and Buzek favorably responded on December 17, 1990, in writing. A window of opportunity to realize this dream was opened by the government's political intention to set up a major research institution in Austria. During the negotiations of the government program of the coalition government Vranitzky #3, I had the good fortune, with the strong support of my then Director General, Dr. Norbert Rosenitsch, a mathematician by training, who is among us. Say hello, Norbert. A mathematician by training at the Ministry of Science and Research, to smuggle a short line into the document under a discussion proposing to set up at least 2 international-oriented big science institutions, Großforschungseinrichtungen was the term of the time, in Austria. In the final version of the governance program, the word at least 2 was replaced by the word 1. I was quite happy. Nonetheless, it was a success, at least for my intentions, and thereby providing crucial governmental backing for planning a new institute, a new initiative in the sciences. From the very beginning of the activities triggered by Vinogradov's intervention, I was in close contact with Walter Thiering and Peter Michler. Michler became active in collecting first ideas laid out in a memorandum in December 1990. An intense phase of preparation for the startup of the institute began during the first half of 1991, resulting in organizing the workshop Interfaces between Mathematics and Physics in May this year. Due to Walter Thiering's highly respected standing as one of the founding figures in modern mathematical physics and first president of the International Association of Mathematical Physics, the international support was overwhelming, and the list of participants of an institutional bridge between mathematics and physics. I name now a few names. Here was Budinich from Trieste, Ellen Kohn from the Collège de France, Fröhlich from Zurich, Fadeev from Leningrad, Galindo from Madrid, Marmor from Napoli, Suchek from Prague, Trautmann from Warsaw, Todorov from Sofia, Vinogradov from Moscow, Jules Vess from Munich. Aided by the local proponents, Michler, Lahnhofer, Thiering, and myself. Vladimir Drinfeld, 1990, winner of the Field Medal for his work on quantum groups, gave his strong support but couldn't participate in person. This meeting, I am convinced, was the very moment of birth of the Schrödinger Institute, the experience still very present to me. Sitting next to Minister Buzek, who attended the morning session of the workshop, I observed that he was completely flabbergasted by the concise and constructive discussion among the participants, an atmosphere he obviously was not accustomed to in political life, daily life. He bent his head to my ear and whispered, "Sind die alle so?" And I spare you the word he said, no? And I answered, "Yes, Minister." I answered, "So they are." I still think this was a crucial moment for gaining Buzek's confidence that this initiative is not just another Luftschloss of unworthy scientists or Luftmenschen. I believe Buzek smelled some additional value for politics and science as well. Let me cite Thiering's statement during the workshop when topics for the future program were discussed. I cite, "In addition to the challenge to find a self-contained quantum field theory, theoretical physics has to explain concrete experiments in physics. And this explanation has to go beyond perturbation theory, but also some long-standing fundamental problems are still open. For instance, mathematical physics has helped to understand stability. He refers to his own work together with Elliot. This turned out to be the first step for constructing dynamics for infinite systems, one of the fundamentals in statistical physics. But the complete understanding of irreversibility and of the approach to equilibrium, the passage from microphysics to macrophysics is still missing. I think he's correct until the day today. Trautmann concluded the discussion by appealing to urgency. Aside, the idea of this institute is so good that it may be stolen, and such an institute might be created elsewhere. It is essential to act quickly. End of quote. The more relaxed atmosphere of the hiring at the evening of the first day's discussion, Ludwig Faddeev remarked, in communist countries, mathematics and mathematical physics was a sort of sheltered retreat for talented people to find independence. Thus, the best intellects were drawn to it. This will change now, and emigration is growing. But the ESI can still get some very good people. The quality-cost ratio for the ESI is the very best possible for a scientific enterprise, which seems possible for Austria just now. But it is urgent to act quickly. Best quality will be assured. Ludwig was absolutely right. He was a mathematician, politician par excellence. The members of the workshop constituted an international scientific advisory board and selected Thiering as chair. Subsequently, an in-depth feasibility study was commissioned by the minister and presented by Thiering, Nahnhofer, and Micho in autumn 1991. This feasibility study had to strike a delicate balance between wishful thinking and political and financial realistic conditions what the Institute proposed. Scientists are not very well prepared as a rule. But as Thiering, Nahnhofer, and Micho, a perfect triangle of proactive collaboration proved scientists can nevertheless be quite effective in convincing politicians if the proposals are sexy and timely at the same level. During its second meeting in October 1991, the Ministerial Working Group Internationale Großforschungseinrichtung mit Sitz in Österreich anonymously recommended the quick implementation of the ESI. As each and every civil servant knows, such recommendations do not mean much in political life. A decisive next step in December 9, 1991, on the science policy level, was the positive recommendation of the Austrian Council for Science and Research, the Scientific Advisory Committee, to the minister to set up this institute. I vividly remember having used the term big science during my representation at the council meeting to be in accordance with the government's program's wording, well known that the use of this term was not really appropriate compared to its use on the international platform like OECD. Anyway, the council rubber-stamped the minister's agenda. A further step on the long way to go. Around this time, there was the only attempt to torpedo the ESI, but repudiated by Minister Buzek and his word given to Thiering. During all of 1991, a search took place for an appropriate accommodation of the new institute, taking into account locations, financial and organizational constraints. Luxembourg, next to the IASA, at Berggasse number 7, a huge building, Marianengasse, a smaller thing. A lot of time was lost by these fruitless activities. In February 1992, during an extremely critical period in finalizing the further steps necessary to set up the institute, Thiering suffered a cerebral hemorrhage during his visit at the Academy of Science in Budapest, where he was invited to give a lecture. In this dramatic situation, it was Jules Wess, Thiering's former assistant and good friend, who immediately stepped in and conducted all necessary negotiations at the ministerial level and helped to keep things going. Again, Busek, I think, was impressed by the professionality in moving forward. In March of 1992, a second workshop, Interfaces between Mathematics and Physics, chaired now by Jules Wess, took place with 140 participants from 17 countries. This occasion was marked by the first meeting of the newly established International Advisory Committee, and the first ESI newsletter was issued in April. At that time, Thiering already had fully recovered from his ailment and was back in business. The International Erwin Schrödinger Institute for Mathematical Physics, with the legal status of a society, a Verein, as mentioned by the Lager before, was officially founded in April 1992, and on May 27th, the Constitutional General Assembly of this society elected Thiering as its president, with Wess, Micho, and myself as deputies, and took the formal decision to set up a research institute under the legal framework of the society. I had the honor to write the statutes of this society. Busek confirmed the statutes in writing in April 24, and the ministry subsequently confirmed the allocated first funds to the institute. It was then 1.9 million Austrian shillings. The physical location and the level of funding of the institute as a whole are still unresolved at this time, at this stage. But at least the stage proceeded to be set, has been set. The great international support and the formidable teamwork among the people involved in the foundation of the Institute of the ESI once again became visible when the conference 75 years of Rad und Transform was held in Vienna in September 1992 as the first widely recognized activity of the Institute. This was initiated by Peter Micho and Simon Gindikin, celebrating the 75th anniversary of the publication of Johann Radon's paper on the transform, which later was named after him, and which set the mathematical background for computer tomography. From June to December 1992, an intense phase of negotiations about the implementation of the Institute took place, but the negotiations with the University of Vienna to be part of the endeavor ended with no results whatever. Our expectation and our optimism became fragile and shaky. With the beginning of 1993, it became all clear that the budget of the Institute, as envisioned in the feasibility study of 1991, had to be reduced by a factor of 3. The Luftschloss of the 1991 feasibility study and its financial and organizational prospect collapsed. In fact, the assumption of the feasibility study had been much too optimistic regarding the scope of housing and financing a new institute from scratch. Politics and Busek in person, it's my opinion, made us aware what is realistic. That means politically feasible. He had a point, Busek. The initial disappointment was quickly overcome when a financial appropriate location for the institute was found by Heidenauer, when I remember correctly, near the Mathematics and Physics Institute of the University of Vienna, in the house where Erwin Schrödinger had spent his last years. What a coincidence. ESI started to operate in January of 1993 with 3 scientific programs, 2 dedicated to physics and 1 in mathematics, and with about 40 visitors from 10 countries. Thiering acted as scientific director and Peter Michor as his executive director. In March, the Institute became visible with the first ESI preprint published. The official opening of the Erwin Schrödinger International Institute for Mathematical Physics took place on April 20th, 1993 at Pasteurgasse 4 and 6. It was later enlarged to about 420 square meters in Vienna's 9th district, very nearby, and under the auspices of Vice Chancellor and Minister for Science and Research, Erhard Busek. At the time of the ESI's opening, the annual budget allocated by the ministry was 10 million Austrian shillings, that is about 750 euros, with small financial contributions coming from ENFN, coming from ETH Zurich, NSF and others. On average, workshops had been supported by about 1 million Austrian shilling. About 1/2 of the 60% of the annual budget was spent on scientific activities. The rest on administration and infrastructure. Visitors supported for other, mainly non-Austrian sources, contributed the equivalent of about 0.75 million Austrian shillings. To attract a larger public, including cultural sciences and philosophy, ESI organized in February 23 to 26, 1994, an international symposium in honor of Boltzmann's 150th birthday. The symposium was opened by a lecture by Walter Thiering on Boltzmann's legacy in the thinking of modern physics. The second speaker was John Leibowitz on time error and Boltzmann's entropy. And I remember very vividly the lecture of T.D. Lee on vacuum as a physical medium, relativistic heavy ion collisions, and the Boltzmann equation. At the end of the day, we had to admit that the technical challenges of the lectures and the lecturers are not compatible with the ambitious aim to open an advanced science to a broader public. The idea to address a non-specialist public was more successfully realized with the Schrödinger lectures already starting in 1992 by Vicky Weiskopf from MIT. Warum sind die Berge so hoch, die Tropfen so klein und die Wasserwellen so lang? A favorite topic of Vicky's at that time. It was followed by a lecture by Roger Penrose from Oxford, Science and the Mind, obviously an open problem. And then Jacques Lascars' very super lecture, Stability of the Solar System. He was brought to Vienna by Peter Michor. From the very beginning of the planning for ESI, a basic set of conceptual and organizational cornerstones were vividly accepted among all people involved. Cross-fertilization of mathematics and physics as the Institute's scientific rationale, as mentioned before, international character of the Institute, second point, highest scientific quality, program orientation of its activities, and invitation of leading experts. Flat organizational and hierarchical structures among management and visitors realized till today, and no permanent position, which is different to other similar institutions. With internationality already in the Institute's name, together with the various committees staffed with international acknowledged and renowned scholars This setting helped to prevent possible local interventions. That was for me a very important point when being at the ministry and helping to set up the thing. A very helpful condition, especially during times of consolidation of the ESI. After slightly more than 2 years, intense discussions about hopes, aims, and philosophy concerning the establishment of this institute, a dream had attained reality. The ESI, as it was soon called by its visitors, quickly made its way into the top league of mathematical physics institutes worldwide, and the institute's attractiveness as a part to work, as a place to work in Vienna established itself astonishingly fast with the worldwide mathematics and physics scientific communities. Let me cite a short passage from the scientific report on the program hypertonic and quaternionic and hyperkähler manifolds, written by Dmitry Alexeyev and Simon Salomon in 1994. I cite, the social life is quite active. The proximity of the city center makes it easy for ESI scientists to unwind and attend cultural events. The open and warm atmosphere of the Institute is certainly influenced by the unique spirit and style of Vienna, a city of art and music, and with organization of work harmonizes within a relaxed way of life, a typical PR sentence, I would say. With the growth of the Institute, even after the renting of further flats at Pasteurgasse, the accommodation at Pasteurgasse soon became too small to house a growing number of visitors. And in July 1996, the Institute moved into the present premises at the second floor of the Boltzmanngasse number 9, a large complex built as an orphanage during the rule of Emperor Joseph II, situated next to the Institute of Physics of the University of Weimar, which was a real asset. The adequate space of 940 square meters, twice as large as before, which now became available, needed heavy refurbishment. I knew the then young and already widely acknowledged Viennese architect and designer Gregor Eichinger. He is sitting in the last row, and I welcome you very heartily that you have made it possible to come to our celebration today. Thank you very much. Okay, Gregor Eichinger. And we arranged a meeting in the coffee house, where else in Vienna, to discuss whether Eichinger is interested to supervise the adaptation of the site. I outlined what the Institute is all about, and Eichinger asked a simple question. What do these people need? My answer was, they need blackboards and chalk. Eichinger's answer was, oh, I see. That was his answer, a very short answer. If you look around, and Largo had given the numbers, if you look around the ESI, every free space has its blackboards. Eichinger's architecture, after a quarter of a century, still serves scientific work well. The money to realize all this came from the ministry, and the decisive person in allocating the funds, beside the minister, because he has to underwrite it, necessary, was Norbert Rosenitsch. With him, I think a good part of the Institute would not have been possible. One last figure to illustrate the scientific work fostered by the ESI in the years 1993 to 1997, its founding period, discussed here. A list of publications gives the impressive number of 520 entries. The foundation of the ESI was, in a sense, a perfect example of opportunism. in the best sense of the word, for taking the initiative at an opportune moment to realize a vision of scientists when a changed geopolitical situation, the fall of the Iron Curtain, favorable local conditions at the governmental level, namely Brussels, a supportive scientific community at home, which is not always the same, or always the case, and at the international level. They all acted in concert. However, all this would not have been sufficient. It was, this is my deep conviction, it was Walter Thirring, his person, his personality, his internationality, his scholarship, and his good instinct in policy matters, maybe earned from his father, who made it reality. Since 1997, Thirring's legacy is in the hands of his successors. Jakob Ingvarsson till 2002, Klaus Schmidt till 2011, Joachim Schwärmer till 2016, and today Christoph Delago. And I think Thirring's legacy bore rich fruit. Let me conclude these very personal reminiscences of the founding period of the ESI by a few remarks on the further development of the Institute. After the Institute of Mathematics of the University of Vienna moved to new premises and left Bolzangasse 9, there was a unique opportunity to rent additional space along the long corridor that outside here, a long corridor leading to the old ESI, going to the glass window, a decision taken in 2003, and I remember quite well the reluctance of the scientists to rent extra space, offering an extra space, office space, and a large lecture room, which is now the Boltzmann lecture hall we are sitting down. This enlargement of space was complemented by two organizational innovations: the creation of the Senior Research Fellows Program, as mentioned before, and the Junior Research Fellows Program in the year after. A decision at the highest ministerial science policy, I don't name names, a level in 1910 to cancel a good part of the non-academic associations organized research institutions in the social and natural sciences. ESI was the only one in the natural sciences, resulted in cutting all budgetary funds. Two of the institutes founded by Brusek, the ESI, and the International Forschungszentrum für Kulturwissenschaften, it was in fact Busek's favorite institute, he was a historian, were treated, among others, threatened among about other 60 research institutions in Austria to close down. It was a decision of the government. A strong solidarity campaign of leading scholars worldwide protested to shut down the ESI. My impression in those days at the ministry, among others, was that the office of the then minister, don't name names, had to learn about the social and political capital of a broad intervention of Fields Medal winners. The public press did learn faster. That was helpful. To kill the institute, named after the scientist who figured on the 1,000-shilling bill of the country's currency, was difficult to argue. The IFK, the Institute for Cultural Studies, became a Viennese outpost institute of the Kunstuniversität Linz. Indeed, a decent decision. ESI finally became a research center of the University of Vienna in 2011, as briefly mentioned before. Since 2011, life of the ESI as a research platform of the University of Vienna was going on in the frame of the approved and successful thematic programs, complemented now by symposia, workshops, schools, and a new instrument called research in teams, considerably enhancing the flexibility and performance of the ESI. All this is managed by a scientific governing board formed by mathematicians and physicists of the University of Vienna. A short disclaimer considering my talk. I am not talking about the scientific achievements during the last 30 years. Do I have no judgments on what was going on? No, this is not my job. An assessment like that is task of the collective evaluation of the scientific community, and the time constant to estimate the relevance of results in the physical and mathematical sciences should be considered cautiously. One last thing, money. In 1993, we saw the graph Christoph had shown to us. In 1993, at the opening of the institute, 30 years ago, the annual budget was about 10 million Austrian shillings. In 2021, the ordinary budget provided by the university was 790 euros, equivalent to about 10 million Austrian shillings in 1993, plus an extra budget of 100,000 euros, I quote, for extra visibility, I think was the quote. No inflation included. So, indeed, since 1993, ESI experienced no significant increase in funding, and I have not included inflation here. Science policy in Austria during the last 30 years, question mark. We will see what the future will offer. ESI at 30, ad multos annos. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang, for this very interesting personal recollections. I hope that we will get this document at some point for our files. Yes, I think it's a very important historical document, actually. Thank you very much. It was wonderful.